Hi everyone, good morning. This is Anne of Woolly Wonka Fibers, and this is a podcast about my knitting, spinning, indie dye and design business, and some information about books I read. Hope everybody's doing great. Happy New Year. Today is Sunday, what is today? January 7th, 2018. I hope you all had a great holiday season, rang in the new year, had some wonderful time with your families. Um, just in general, enjoyed the holidays. I have to say that I worked in the medical field for almost 20 years. And since I had gone full time with my yarn business a couple of years ago and got out of that industry, it's been really, really nice not to have to go in and work like every holiday. Uh, I understand that, 24 hours a day. And yes, I love the fact that if something were to happen, I could go to the hospital and there'd be people there doing work. But at the same time, yeah, I had I took one Christmas off in, I think it was 18 years. That's a long time, and it just gets old. So yeah, it was a very nice, relaxing holiday break for me. I took both Christmas Day and New Year's Day off, and the weekends before. And did some work in between because I'm getting prepared to go to Stitches West at the end of February. If you're planning on attending, please know that I would love to see you in the booth. Just stop by and say hi, and that you watched my podcast or are a customer or whatever. I'm in booth 120, which is kind of to the left. It's in the left column as you come in the main doors, all the way to the left, down at the end of that first row, by the concession stand. So if you need a drink, you can stop by and say hi and head on over there and buy yourself a beverage. So I'm getting prepped for that, and in the throes of dying, and all the stuff that comes along with that. So busy couple of months ahead, and then I'm off to Interweaves Yarn Fest, which is in Loveland, Colorado, where I will be vending. I think it's the first full weekend in April. If you are a new viewer, welcome. Glad to have you along. If you're a returning viewer, as always, thank you for choosing to come back and spend some time with me. I always appreciate that. Um, let's see. If you are a member of the Ravelry group, and you certainly should be because there's all kinds of fun stuff going on over there. If you are there, please look for the post that I started that is titled Member Opinions. I would really appreciate you guys who haven't tossing some feedback my way. Just as I say in the post, there's no right answer, no wrong answer. I'm just trying to get some feedback on things that you all find engaging, interesting, would like to knit, kind of how you like to approach your projects, that sort of thing. So that information is in the Ravelry group, which is Woolly Wonka Fibers. Also, if you are somebody who is a hand spinner, you have until the 12th of January, which is the end of next week, or this coming week, Friday, if you want to sign up for the year-long subscription to the Fiber Club. That gets you a discount on each of the packages. You don't have to think about it. They'll just show up at your house once every month for the next 12 months. All of the information on the Hand Spinners Club is in the Ravelry group forum post entitled Hand Spinners Club, oddly enough. I will post links to those forums down below so you can take a look. So let's talk some knitting. I have an FFO that I don't think I've shared. It's been a while since I've podcasted, so if you've seen these before, pretend that you haven't. These are my Gingerbread House self-striping socks. The yarn is a sport weight called Strong Sport from Jinx Yarns, my friend Laura's online Etsy store. Again, the colorway is Gingerbread House. It features wide stripes that are kind of the gingerbread brown, and then a speckle dye, and then the white icing. So I knit these actually on size 2s because they are sport weight. Did the twisted rib 1x1 ribbing for the cuffs, 56 stitch leg, fish lips kiss heel, my usual kind of boxy looking toe. So these were done. These were actually done before Christmas and in time to wear for the holidays. So go me, because I don't often get seasonal knits actually knit in the season. So yay. And another skein of sock yarn out of stash. Always good. So if you're following along with the Woolly Wonka Palooza 2018, which I think is shaping up to be very fun, I'm excited that folks have started projects. A lot of people cast on New Year's Day as like a new year, new start kind of thing. This month's prompts are lace or gray, or both. You can combine those two things in your project if you'd like. So the piece that I am opting to do is gray based, and it is the Bolt Shawl by Vera Valimaki. It's a fingering weight shawl, originally knit in Brooklyn Tweed Loft. I am knitting it in my Art and Decay, 2 shades of gray. This is Chimney Sweep, and this is Soot. Now, I don't have a ton done. I've been working on the contract piece that is so close to being done. I just have finishing left to do on it. Buttons arrived, so I can sew those on. Got to do all my ends, block it, you know, that kind of stuff. But basically done, which I'm very happy about. So here is where I am. Make sure I've got the right side. Nope. Here's where I am so far on Bolt. Really simple, basic garter stitch kind of triangle with stripes. So the way that the construction works on this is that you work the section with these stripes till you have 22 of them. Then you bind off, so you have that leftover triangle, striped triangle, and then you pick stitches back up along one edge and you knit with the other striped pattern. So it's kind of a modular knit in some respects, but you know, pretty basic, simple, straightforward knit. This was like not even an hour worth of work, I would say. But I'll get back to working on this week, spend some more time on it now that I've got that contract piece finished, which I am excited about. If you are participating in the Woolly Wonka Palooza, there will be a new thread starting like the 15th, probably next weekend, that will contain information about some pattern suggestions and some colorway suggestions for our February prompts. And again, you can pick this up anytime. It is a year-long knit along, craft along, but you don't have to do every month, and you don't have to necessarily kill yourself to get a whole bunch of stuff done. All the information is over in that thread. If you're a spinner, you can also spin something that would fit the color prompt if you're inclined, and count that yardage as opposed to knitted yardage. Your choice. Let's see. 2 other things of note, I guess. I had decided that I'm going to participate in 2 kind of New Year resolution-y sort of things, and participate in 2 of the prompts over in the Blaine Fleece and Fiber group that Jennifer Bogut runs. She is the shepherdess who is the owner proprietress of Blaine Fleece and Fiber. She has an Etsy store. You can go check that out. I will put in a link below. But anyway, she has 2 prompts in her group that I thought would work really well with what I want to do with the Wonka Palooza. One of which is name your own spin along goal, and the other of which is name your own craft along goal. So for the spinning goal, I decided I would try to get 5 pounds of roving out of stash this year. That will basically free up two of the cubicles that you see behind me right here that have my fiber stash in them. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Then I am also going to participate in her Name Your Own challenge along for knitting. And my friend Jenny, Tiny Dancer Knits on Ravelry, she committed to knitting 10,000 yards of yarn in 2018. And I thought that sounded like a good idea too. So I jumped on that bandwagon and I went ahead and signed up for that. So I am going to be trying to knit 10,000 yards. I'd like to try to do it all from stash projects. We'll see how that goes. I have a bunch of other things that are going to get knit this year that are like contract type pieces. So we'll see. It might be kind of close for 10,000 yards of quote personal yarn, but you know, I'm going to give it a shot. I know I'll knit 10,000 yards. That won't be an issue. I probably knit at least that most years. So gonna kind of stick with that. You may have also noticed, if you are somebody who is active on Ravelry, that Casey, in all of his brilliance, has created a challenge tag that you can, if you go to your notebook, it's now all the way on the farthest right-hand corner tab. It says challenge. And you can go in and you can, now he doesn't do it by yards and he doesn't do it by ounces or pounds. He does it by projects. So I went ahead and just set that up as like a visual motivator for myself, because one thing that I've found that helps me a lot to kind of get things done is if I make a list and I make a plan that I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on this for 5 days, or I'm going to work on this the month of January. I find that I actually tend to check stuff off the list and plan and make that happen in a more consistent way than I might otherwise. So if that helps you, great. You know, if it feels like too much pressure, then don't do it. But for me, I kind of actually like that sort of thing. So I went ahead and clicked on that. I set myself up for 18 projects. Since I don't have all my projects picked out for the year, I have no idea if that's too many, too few, just about right. No idea. But, you know, it's 2018 and I thought 18 projects sounded sort of symmetrical. So I decided to go ahead and do that. So just a little note, if that's of interest to you, that's now available on your Ravelry notebook page. Okay, so for knitting plans going forward this week, going to do up the final finishing bits and bobs on that contract sweater. I'm going to cast on for another contract knit. It's going to be a vest. And I'm going to work on bolt. That seems good. So let's move on to spinning. Let's talk about spinning. So again, one of the 2 prompts for January's Woolly Wonka Palooza is gray. So I decided one of the other things I'm going to do is work on a gray colorway in my hand spun. So I wandered over to the bins, grabbed the first thing that I saw that had a lot of gray, and that turned out to be Ocean Wind Knits February 2017 Club with a photograph inspired by Lake Louise in Alberta. All of the colorways that Lori did last year for her Fiber Club are themed on something in Canada, because she did an O Canada club. And so here is the picture. Photograph is by Ezra Jeffrey. The snow-covered mountains and everything in the background. And this is on a superwash merino. And this is the colorway. So it's mostly gray with a little pop of this kind of golden brown, goldy orange color in it. And this is half of the 4 ounces. The other half I have already started. I have the singles almost, the first 2 ounces of singles almost spun up. I'll work on those this week, and then this will go on the wheel. So the first of my 20 pounds to be spun superwash merino from Ocean Wind Knits. Gonna do that as a 2-ply, probably sport wheat-ish. We'll see how it looks when I get there. Super fast spin. Yeah, okay, so that was it for spinning. Moving on. I decided that I'm gonna break my stitching stuff out of this video, so if you're interested in stitching things, you can go over and check my other video that will be labeled Floss Tube. That's where any of that is going to live from now on. We'll keep this knitting, spinning, reading over here. Okay, I do have a finished spin to show you, but it's actually still wet and drying because I finished plying it on the 1st and just tossed it in to soak last night and set the twist. Excuse me. Cough-sies. Okay, so let's talk about books. I did finish my 2017 reading challenge for last year with my final book, which was the Time Traveler's Almanac. That was my long book. I probably shouldn't have saved it till last, but it worked out okay. As with many short story anthologies, there were some really, really great stories in there, and there were some sort of stories in there, or stories that I didn't enjoy as much as others. We'll say that. Obviously all themed around the concept of time travel. The ones I like best are ones where the story either takes place where they're going back to a historical period, or somebody from a known historical period is jumping forward to our time. I wasn't as much into the ones that are like super futuristic. A lot of them tend to be very downer kind of stories where there's been some cataclysmic thing that's happened on Earth and people have jumped forward into the future to save themselves, or that kind of thing. I don't care for those as much as I do the ones with a historical background or basis to them, which is probably no surprise if you know me and know what I tend to read. So anyway, finished off 2017. That was book number 52. So I completed that challenge. I was really happy about that. And am really enjoying so far 2018. So let me tell you what I have read. I will put links to all of the books on their Goodreads pages below. So 2018, the first book that I read was kind of a random topic for week 1, which was pick a book with AT and Y. Those letters had to appear somewhere in the title. So the book I picked was called City of Brass. This book is kind of a combination. It's not quite young adult, but I think it would be fine for young adults. Not a ton of violence. There is a little bit. It's not gratuitous. It's just like battle type scenes. The premise is there's a young girl living on the streets of Cairo, and she basically is a con artist, but one of the things that she knows about herself but can't explain is that she can read people's health. Like if somebody walks in to her little booth, she can tell if they've got a real sickness. Excuse me one second. Be right back. Sorry about that. I'm back. So I was talking about the City of Brass. So anyway, our heroine has some extra skills, and she is conducting a con, basically, to theoretically exorcise a demon from this local girl. And in doing so, she uses some sort of gibberish words, which actually mean something, and she conjures up a genie, who's this ancient warrior, and she's summoned him from beyond. And in doing so, she's also released two kind of evil spirits who are locked onto her as the summoner of the genie to dispatch. So the genie winds up saving her, and they have sort of the adventure to escape these evil spirits. And the only place that will be safe for her is this magical city called the City of Brass. So he takes her there, and it turns out that she is kind of the last of a certain tribe of healers. There's a lot of political factioning in the City of Brass. There's 6 different cultural groups that live there. The main group, who are based in the fire element. The sheikh who runs the city is kind of, he's not a tyrant, but he's definitely somebody who believes in the sword is mightier than the pen. So there's all kinds of sort of magical things going on, and she gets sucked into a lot of the court politics and intrigue. So it winds up being an adventure story, but there's a lot of other stuff going on in it. It mixes in some fantasy. It mixes in magic. I thought it was a really nicely done book. There's so many sort of fantasy books that are set in like Victorian England or Celtic Britain, things like that. It was just really nice to read a book, very refreshing to read a book that was set somewhere in a completely different culture than what most of us are used to reading. And I thought it was nicely handled, the way that some sort of ancient Egyptian mythology was tied into the story. So I really liked that. There are 2 more books. I believe this is the first in a trilogy, so there are 2 more books. It didn't bother me too much at the end. Sometimes when an author comes out with like the first book, and then you're told that there's going to be 2 or 3 or however more down the road, they kind of wind up with a cliffhanger where you're forced to read the other books, or else it's not a complete story. And this one was actually a pretty complete story, so that didn't bother me particularly. Entertaining read, not probably suitable for young middle schoolers, but junior high or high school and older could read this book, I think, and be fine with it in terms of content. So that was my first book for 2018. I then read a book called The Sea Road, which is about the Viking explorations of the North American continent. I had watched a really, really great Netflix documentary that's about the science. There was a National Geographic article actually on it in one of last year's issues, talking about using computer-generated satellite images in order to find likely places where there were remains of human occupation, buildings, structures, things that would not be seen by the naked eye and would also not appear on normal satellite photography. It was like infrared photography from space. So I had watched that documentary and was really interested in the settlements and the buildings that they've found in what's now like Newfoundland and the very north coast of Canada, in that sort of Newfoundland area and around the bay. So this book was about that. The way that the book is constructed is it's written as an old woman's memoirs. Gudrun, who was one of the few Viking women to have gone to the New World. And I guess there's some basis for this book in historic chronicles. She was the sort of daughter-in-law of Eric the Red. And it was her husband. Her first husband goes by himself to Vinland, and winds up dying. And her second husband, so her first husband is Eric the Red's son. She then is sort of under Eric the Red's wing, and she winds up marrying another Viking explorer who is interconnected with the family but not a blood relative. So then she and the second husband wind up going with a small crew in 2 boats to explore and look for timber. So the story is told with her reminiscing to a young monk who is scribing her story, set in the 11th century. Okay, I liked the basic story, had a strong female character. I think the author did a great job in terms of her historical references. It's obvious that she did a lot of social history background and studying and all of that. Did a really good job describing daily life, describing how the Vikings piloted their ships, and interwove that into the story. The part I didn't like was it's not really clear why anyone in Rome and the Pope of the time would care at all about this woman's story. There's like no historical information in the book about why this is even happening, and you're thinking to yourself, what? Why is she in Rome? Why does the Pope care about what her story is? Why are they having this guy, other than to advance the story, why are they having this young monk scribe the story down? It doesn't make any sense, basically. There's about 3 pages at the very end of the book that at a very, very, very high level give you some of that backstory, but I didn't think it was enough. And you know, I was a history major. I took a lot of medieval history, and I know this is kind of very early, right? 11th century. However, even with that, I was extremely confused about where this was placed on the historical timeline, and again, why this mattered to anybody. So that part was like a little stilted or jarring, like when it kept cutting to that portion of her story where she's talking directly to this monk. And the other thing that I thought was odd about how the author wrote this was like she would record the conversation that Gudrun was having with the monk, but it would be a totally one-sided record of the conversation. It's just what Gudrun says. So there's like these ... pauses where I assume the monk is saying something back to her, but they're not written down. It's like missing half the conversation. Why? Why would you do that? I don't get that part either. So I gave this book 3.5 stars. Again, I really liked the historical accuracy of it. I liked all the historical details. I liked all of that nitty-gritty stuff. I did not like kind of how the information was presented. I think it would be confusing for a lot of people. So read with reservations, I guess, is where that book lands on my spectrum. Currently, I have just downloaded a new book, haven't gotten into it far enough to really be able to tell you guys much about it, but it is an alternative history / steampunk / adventure kind of book set in San Francisco in 1906, and sounds really good. So high hopes for that one, and I'll talk to you guys about that next time I come back. If you are interested in kind of either seeing a little bit more in-depth information about the books that I'm reading, I'm doing an individual review on each one of those in my personal blog. We'll link it below. And I also have a page on my blog that lists all of the Around the World in 52 Books topics for 2018. And as I read books, I'm popping them in there with titles and links, so you can always find them on Goodreads if something sounds like it's up your alley. So I think that's it for this go round. Next time I talk to you guys will be something like the weekend of the 20th, the 21st. So halfway through the month of January already. That'll be weird feeling. Again, this year is already moving faster than I think it should. So I hope you guys have a great couple of 2 weeks. I hope you've got some time to get some knitting done and enjoy some crafty time. Until I talk to you again, take care. Bye.